The Goodreads Choice Awards are almost upon us, so today I will be guessing what books are going to be nominated for the best books of the year on the Goodreads Choice Awards. I already did a video for the adult fantasy category, which is the category that I am the most familiar with, but today I thought I would see if I can guess books that are going to be in the other categories. I will be going over young adult books, young adult fantasy, general fiction, science fiction, nonfiction, memoirs, autobiographies, biographies. I think they're all under one category, middle grade, and historical fiction. Now, a lot of these categories, I don't have a complete list of books under each category. Some of them I only have a handful of books, though I'm pretty confident those couple books are going to be on the Goodreads Choice Awards. So if you have any ideas of what books are going to be in any of these categories, please let me know in the comments. I'd be really curious to find out what books I'm overlooking. And let me know if you have any guesses of what books might win these categories. I will be doing a live reaction whenever the Goodreads Choice Awards actually drop. I already have that video linked, so if you want to hit the notify me on that, that will be splendid. And with that, let's get into this video. Starting off with the YA category, I don't actually have very many books in the YA category, and the one I'm going to start off with is probably wishful thinking. I'm really hoping Warrior Girl Unearthed makes the YA category, though it only has 44,000 people shelving it. This is one of the few YA books I read this year, and I really enjoyed this book, and I am really hoping that this book gets the recognition it deserves. I only have two other books for the YA category, though I'm a lot more confident that these ones have a chance of making the nominees. The first one is The Brothers Hawthorne. This one has 171,000 people shelving this book on Goodreads. And the Hawthorne Legacy books, or I think it's called the Hawthorne Legacy. These books were really big all over the bookternet, and I feel fairly confident that this one will be on the nominees. And the other book I have as our YA nomination is Divine Rivals. This is a Rebecca Ross book that I have been seeing literally everywhere. I think this is Rebecca Ross's most popular book, and it has almost 500,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. So out of the YA books I can think of, I think Divine Rivals has the strongest chance of not only making the nominees, but possibly winning, although I'm probably overlooking like some YA book that I am just like blind to at this moment. Moving on to YA fantasy, my first guess was Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. This book came out in January and was a book that I felt like I was seeing everywhere, though it only has just over 81,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, so I'm not sure if that's enough people shelving it to actually make the nominees. The next book I thought of is A Study in Drowning. This is a book that just came out in September, and I have read this book. I have a review for it. I will have linked in the cards. I really love this book, and I have seen it getting quite a bit of hype around the bookternet. It has 124,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, so I think it has a stronger chance of making the nominees, although I don't have the fantasy category filled out, so I might be overlooking something. Next on our list is Chain of Thorns. This is a Cassandra Clare book, and I feel like Cassandra Clare books have done decently well in the Goodreads Choice Awards previously. This one has 153,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. And the book that almost flew under the radar for me is A Curse for True Love. This is the third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. This book has a lot of people shelving it, even though it just came out in October. This has over 173,000 people shelving it. And the most popular book on my list is Stolen Heir, which came out in January, and I almost wasn't sure if it came out this year. I feel like I've seen this book around quite a lot, so I thought maybe it was the previous year, but it came out in January this year, and it has over 280,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. So I have pretty high confidence that Stolen Heir will be on the YA fantasy categories. Moving on to science fiction. I had a decent number of guesses for this category, but so many of them had fewer people shelving it on Goodreads than I expected, and I'm really not sure what to make of that. The first book I have is Children of Memory. This is a book in the Children of Time series. It does have over 12,000 people rating it on Goodreads, which I feel like is a fair amount for a book that just came out this year. Although it only has 35,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, which makes me a little hesitant that it's going to make the nominations. The next book I have on this list might also be wishful thinking. That is Some Desperate Glory. This book has 37,000 people shelving it, so again, not enough people shelving it to make me confident. I started this book, it had to go back to the library before I could finish it, but I really enjoyed the part that I read and I want to check this book out again and finish it. It's also a standalone sci-fi, so I'm hoping it makes the list, but I don't know, it doesn't have that many people shelving it. The next book on my list is Ascension, and this was a book that I was seeing absolutely everywhere whenever it came out in April, and I even saw some people shelving it that don't typically read sci-fi. But this book only has 47,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, which makes me really hesitant to say that this is going to be one of the nominees. The next book I have on my list is Starter Villain, which is another book that I was seeing everywhere whenever it first came out. This book came out in September and has over 10,000 people rating it on Goodreads already, and it has over 53,000 people shelving it, which is starting to make me wonder, maybe the sci-fi category, a lot more books with maybe fewer people shelving it actually make the list, because maybe sci-fi doesn't have these like big blockbuster breakout. Oh, you know what I bet's gonna be on this list? A Star Wars book. I wonder what Star Wars books came out this year. Or what other popular series? I was just gonna say Star Trek, but I don't know that any Star Trek books have actually come out this year. Those are gonna make the sci-fi list. Next book I have is Lightbringer. This is a book in the Red Rising series, and I am almost confident Lightbringer is going to make the list. Lightbringer has over 92,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, and this was a book that when it came out, like literally everyone I knew was reading it. So I don't know, unless maybe I don't know people who read enough sci-fi. And the most surprising one that I have on this list is In the Lives of Puppets. I actually thought this was a fantasy book until I started making my predictions for the fantasy category, and this book says it's sci-fi, which I don't know if that's correct. I don't know if this might end up in the fantasy category instead, but this book has over 168,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, which makes me fairly confident that it is going to be one of the nominees in either the sci-fi category or the fantasy category. Moving on to general fiction, I thought Family Lore had a decent chance of being nominated to the general fiction category. I've literally been on hold on this book at my library for months, and it has 80,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. However, the couple other books that I decided are probably going to make the general fiction nominees have so many people shelving it that it really makes me hesitate. General fiction might be the category where all of the nominees have a really high number of people shelving it. So I don't know, but I'm still gonna go with Family Lore might be on the list. Next book I think might be on the list is The House of Eve. This book was literally advertised all over Goodreads, and I just kept seeing this book everywhere whenever it first came out. And this book has over 190,000 people shelving it on Goodreads, which is quite a lot. The next book I have on my list is Hello Beautiful. This is both an Oprah Winfrey book club book and a Barack Obama books to read in the summer. I think it's his summer reading list is what he calls it. And this has over 473,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. So I'm fairly confident this book will make the nominees. But a book that I feel confident will make the general fiction category nominees and has even more people shelving it is Yellowface. This book came out early in the year. I did a review for it. I will have that linked in the cards as well if you're wanting to see that. And it has over 603,000 people shelving this book. So well over 500,000 people. This book, I'm not confident it can win the general fiction category, but it was literally everywhere. So maybe. Moving on to memoirs, autobiographies, and biographies, this was another category that really surprised me. There's a handful of really popular celebrity memoirs that came out this year that I feel confident will make the list, but some of the memoirs did not have quite the number of people shelving it as I thought it would. Two of the books that I thought would make the list is A Living Remedy and Michael Orr's book, When Your Back's Against the Wall. But both of these didn't have very many people shelving it. Like less than 30,000 people shelved both of these books. And I just don't think that a book with that few people shelving it could actually make the list. But I don't have this category filled out. I don't have 20 picks for this list. So maybe it will. I just feel like I'm probably overlooking some other memoir, biography, autobiography that was really popular that just didn't really go across my radar. The next book I thought for sure would make this list is Jill Duggar's book, Counting the Cost, but it only has 62,000 people shelving it. Now, that might be enough to make the nominees, but it's not as many people as I thought would be shelving this book. The next book I have is Britney Spears' book, The Woman in Me. Now, this is not just recency bias. Even though this book literally just came out, it already has 127,000 people shelving this book. So I feel pretty confident this one is going to make the nominees. But the book that I think has a chance of actually winning the Goodreads memoir, biography, autobiography category is Spare by Prince Harry. This book has over 626,000 people shelving it. And of course, whenever it came out, like this book was everywhere. People who don't even always read autobiographies, memoirs, were reading this book. So I mean, unless there's another one that I just was somehow oblivious to this year, I really think Spare is going to win this category. Moving on to the nonfiction category, I only have 3 picks for this category. My first one is Fever in the Heartlands. This was a book that, again, whenever this book came out, it seemed like everyone that I was following on Goodreads was reading this book and shelving this book, and it was all over the bookternet. And it only has 75,000 people shelving it, which might be enough to make the nominees in the nonfiction category. I guess we'll find out. The next book I have on this list is Poverty by America. Honestly, this one wasn't one that I was seeing quite as much as Fever in the Heartlands, but it has 96,000 people shelving this book. So I feel like this one has a very strong chance of making the nominees. And the most popular book on my nonfiction picks is The Wager. This book has 168,000 people shelving it, and basically this book again was everywhere. I almost want to say I think The Wager might win the nonfiction section, but I don't know what else is going to be on this list. I only have 3 picks, so I'm obviously missing a lot of books here. Moving on to middle grade, I have very, very few picks for middle grade. My initial thought was, of course, a Rick Riordan book or a Rick Riordan Presents book. And Rick Riordan Presents released 8 books this year, and none of them have more than 3,000 shelvings on Goodreads. Now, I don't know how many people who read middle grade, particularly if they are actually children reading middle grade and not adults reading middle grade, I don't know how many people actually shelve or keep track of their reading on Goodreads. But how else is Goodreads going to pick the middle grade books? So middle grade might be a category that we see a lot fewer shelvings for the books that make the nominees. I also thought Kelly Yang might make the nominees. She released 2 books this year, and her most popular one is Finally Seen, with 4.4 thousand people shelving that book. But now getting into the books Rick Riordan wrote himself, The Sun and the Star, I feel like is almost surely making this list. This is a Camp Half-Blood book and has over 67,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. And he has another book coming out in the Percy Jackson series, which, as I said in my previous video, last year's eligibility, an author could make the same category if they wrote books in different series, but the same series won't be nominated multiple times. I guess it depends how you qualify series, because it is in the same world. The Percy Jackson book is The Chalice of the Gods, with over 85,000 people shelving it. And my final category is historical fiction. I only have 2 books for this category. This is my smallest category, but the 2 books I chose have the highest number of people shelving it. I feel fairly confident that these books are going to make the list. The first one is Sing Me a River. This is a historical fiction that has over 108,000 people shelving it, and a really popular one that I saw everywhere. Again, the only two books I picked for this category are books that I saw everywhere, because this is not a category I'm quite as much in tune to. And the other book I have for the historical fiction category is Lady Tan's Circle of Women. This again is a very popular book with 159,000 people shelving this book. And those are all my picks. I know I'm missing a lot, so again, comment if you have any ideas of what might be on these categories. And if you want to see my picks for the fantasy category, I will have that video linked right here.